Now, one of the most common symptoms you'll see with back pain is pain bending down. Generally, it isn't the actual bending down that causes the issue. It's always the bending down and then coming back up, which usually transitions into low back pain or pain down the leg. And sometimes this can happen on a day-to-day basis, in the gym, picking up your grandkids, or even just doing your shoes and socks in the morning. And unfortunately, it's the most common symptom you'll see with back pain. The hesitancy and discomfort seen with bending down to even do the simplest of tasks can actually keep people out of the gym for really, really long periods of time. And actually it's one of the easiest things that we fix and teach at Move. So the really, really simple way of understanding how we protect our back, one on the way down, but more importantly, actually on the way back up, is simply understanding that the task of us bending forward doesn't actually rely on our low back a hell of a lot. However, it's a really common and normal thing for majority of people to do, just because our body thinks it's safer and easier to use the lower back because it's bigger and it's stronger to slow down that motion. We don't actually want the lower back to do a lot of work at all. The main thing that we want is the big strong muscles through the glutes and our hamstrings to technically slow the motion down, and this allows us to create space for our lower back to actually come up safely through the motion, which again is often where most of the pain is going to come from, especially if we've got added weight with a grandkid or even a barbell or even a dumbbell in the gym or at day to day. Coming back up with our lower back already in quite an exposed position is generally where low back issues often arise from. The main thing for the lower back is actually, like I've mentioned, getting the lower back just to do a little bit less than it usually does. Now, the main thing for us to consider is our center of gravity and just our general center of mass of where we actually put ourselves if we're about to pick something up. Now, most people are going to feel their lower back either bending down slightly just to wash their face, do the dishes, brush their teeth, or combined actually when you get really low down and on the way back up. Let's go with the first strategy to understand actually what we want to happen on the way down. If we're going to look at that first strategy where we're just going to lean forward slightly, let's take the legs completely out of it and let's look at it from a sitting position. So the main thing that we actually want here is ribcage mobility and a bit of motion. So a big thing that we'll look at Move is the combination between the ribcage and the pelvis and how generally them two sync together to allow the spine to have more freedom to move, to decompress, to rotate, and to generally move with good and excellent control. So as you'll see here, the rib cage has a lot of ability to move, to decompress, to expand. On the way down, we want the rib cage to move and decompress out of the way. So generally the spine can move and the muscles around the posterior chain, your lower back and mid back, can actually lengthen and expand and then slowly let go on the way down. So one of the key drills that we would use would be a seated relaxation drill where we teach someone to slouch, relax their neck, reach all the way down to the ground and get comfortable exhaling on the way down. The reason why? A good controlled exhale allows the ribcage to move anyway, and then that promotes the nervous system to understand it's actually really safe to be here, because what happens is the nervous system directly goes into rest and digest, which is just the opposite to fight or flight. When the nervous system's relaxed and we're actually moving into flexion with a relaxed nervous system, it starts to then learn that, okay, we're safe to be here and there's no reason for us to experience or expect a threat. So now we have a bit of an understanding of the concept of how we go down through the rib cage. The pelvis is exactly the same. And now one of the most important drills that I use to teach this is the pelvic tilt drill, where ultimately we're learning how the pelvis and rib cage interact together, combining with breathing and combining with hand reaches. Now, my absolute favorite drill to teach someone in our first session who struggles with bending down is a pelvic tilt drill that's really made simple, and it helps you understand the transition of moving forward and up and down to how we want the pelvis and the rib cage to interact with the motion so our low back does a little bit less again. The drill's really simple. First, you learn how to pelvic tilt up, down, down. Now, the important thing here is understanding that when we arch our back, that brings us into an anterior tilt. That is naturally our extension pattern when we reach above our head. When we bring our pelvis down, and then when we go into a posterior tilt and round our back onto the floor, this is more linked to our flexion based, our toe touch positions. So what I get people to learn and get comfortable doing is just working up, down, and finding the base of where you feel comfortable. And all we're gonna do is use those ranges to allow us to breathe in through the nose, as we go into an anterior tilt, and then we're going to breathe out through our mouth on the way down. We want this to be roughly a 3 to 5 second controlled inhale through the nose, and then a 8 to 16 second controlled exhale through the mouth. The longer you breathe out, the more relaxed your nervous system becomes. And then finally, what we add to the breathing and the pelvic tilts is a hand reach overhead as we come up and breathe in, and then a posterior tilt is going to be met with a crunch and a breath out. Breathe in, long reach through the fingers, and then exhale. And I want us to feel as if we could breathe for as long as we can. If you shake, and that's a really positive sign because your nervous system's now starting to get stressed, but actually starting to figure out that we're tolerating this position well because it's really, really safe for us to be in. So now if we're thinking about having to bend down and get a bit further to pick something up, the main thing we want to think about is where our general chest is within our center of mass and our center of gravity. And what I mean by that is most people will lean forward naturally to pick something up. And all that will do is just put my chest slightly outside of my center of mass. And the way that you can view that is where it sits above your feet. Now, what I want people to get comfortable to do is as we load down, I want us to be comfortable allowing the back and the hips to initiate the motion, not our chest to initiate the motion like so. What happens is, second our hips slow that motion down, my center of mass is instantly between my feet, meaning my lower back is in a much safer position to actually come straight back up, as opposed to leaning forward. There's nowhere for my legs to really help me here. So ultimately my lower back has to engage to bring myself back up. You add weight to the situation, it becomes a big problem. So really simply, to show you, if something's outside of my center of mass and I pick something up, I'm here, I don't really have much support to extend through my hips to help me here. And now, for example, if I'm able to drive the motion down through my hips, my chest is in a better position, I can pick up the object and reach down a bit further, control the weight through like so, and my lower back has had to do very little through that drill, and all of the drill has come through, and all the motion has come through my hips, my hamstrings, my glute, my strong big muscles here, and it's going to protect my lower back in the gym and in the day-to-day. So this is all about utilizing our lower body much more efficiently, so then our lower back has less to do on the way back up. The way that we would teach this, we would often get you into a split stance position, just because generally it lets you to sit a little bit more relaxed into a much more centered and more stable base. And then it allows us to get more efficiently through one leg to transition into a much more safer and stronger ascending motion. This is what we're going to do. Main thing I want you to think about is actually your midfoot. Now the midfoot is just underneath the sole of your foot. This is where I want you to push down and create force. And the second main thing alongside that is understanding that the knee is not allowed to straighten before your hip does. Now, if your knee straightens on the way back up, really simply, if the knee straightens here, my lower back is still in the position where it needs to come back up. When our center of mass, yes, is in a better position, but what's to say that I've actually got a bit of weight or something in my hand and I come back up with speed, my legs aren't helping me there. My back is, again, doing a little bit too much more work. So really simply, if I could push with the balls of my feet, my calf gets involved, and that's going to slow down how my knee straightens because it's going to work really closely with my quads, and it's going to work together to stop my knee from extending a bit too quickly. And so really simply, if I could push with the balls of my feet, my calf, my quads, and my hip extensors are going to work really well as a team to safely bring myself back up. As I push with the balls of my feet here, my calf and my quad are working, my lower back has come up safely, my knee has stayed slightly bent, which means these muscles all have to be still working as a team, and it gives little room for my lower back to do any work at all. And so what we're going to show here is actually on the way back up, by us pushing through the balls of our feet and generally transitioning weight through our foot to allow the calf, the quads, and the hip to work better as a team. The load is transitioned really efficiently through the whole of the leg. So then again, the lower back has 0 reason and 0% reason to get involved. This is all we're trying to do. Get the lower back to do less on the way down, get the legs to do a lot more on the way back up, and generally, the lower back will do a lot less work on a day-to-day, and it will definitely do a lot less work going forward, because you can teach your nervous system that this is safe, efficient, and more effective in getting your lower back to do a lot less work on a day-to-day and in the gym. Now with this example, if we've shifted our hips backward really nicely, the lower back generally doesn't have to do a lot of work because we've got more muscles such as our glutes, our hamstrings, and our calves all slowing this movement down nice and safely, so then the lower back has very little to do.